for wronging them, even though I don't advocate violence. If somebody even wants to consider forgiveness, then maybe that should be a wake-up call about bad behavior. But we need to start having an emphasis and default setting for forgiveness. If forgiveness comes before the silence, maybe this isn't healthy. Because in a lot of churches, once you forgive somebody, you shouldn't talk about it. And if not talking about it helps you to heal, that is a valid choice. The problem here is when they force and expect you to forgive, and then they expect you never to talk about it. And this is what I call the NDA of church, the non-disclosure agreement. A lot of churches expect you to forgive and never talk about the wronged again. What if that wrong is a crime? What if it's a unethical behavior that may not be a crime, but people need to know? Survivors get retribution from people when they try to warn people about somebody they've forgiven. Warning people about someone who's hurt you doesn't make your forgiveness or lack of unforgiveness. It doesn't impact it. There should never be a requirement of silence after forgiveness, because silence is how predators continue preying on people. Sometimes forgiveness comes before a warning. The most loving thing you can do for a community is to warn. And a lot of churches say, don't bear false witness against people. They try to silence victims and survivors with forgiveness and no longer thinking or talking about it. This is a non-disclosure agreement, even if one hasn't been signed. It's similar to like a boys' club. You don't tell on people. You don't ever air dirty laundry. And this keeps people trapped in abusive marriages, codependent mentorships, unhealthy church dynamics. Whether or not you forgive or how silent you are after you forgive should only be about the best interests of the person forgiving. If it's therapeutic to talk about it, talk about it. If it's morally right to warn people, warn people. But there should never be an expectation of forgiveness or silence, because this kind of expectation protects people. It doesn't create safe spaces for people. And it's all about protecting the guilty and punishing the wronged. There's nothing wrong with feeling wronged. Anger is usually justifiable. The problem is when you use anger to commit a crime or behave in a way that is not acceptable. It is okay to be angry, to feel as though you've been wronged. Learn to control your anger. And sometimes the best way to share anger is by standing up in a church service and informing everybody what someone is capable of. You can do it in a loving way that isn't about vengeance. It's about justice, protection, and keeping everything open. Forgiveness doesn't equate to forgetting a harm. It doesn't mean ignoring the wrongdoing or acting as if nothing happened. Forgiveness doesn't necessarily require reconciliation, especially if the offender has no remorse, is unrepentant, it's not the first or second time, or if the relationship doesn't do anything good for the person who forgives. So yes, The default setting in Christianity is forgiveness and reconciliation, because harmful environments don't want people to not reconcile, because that's a symptom that there has been something in their midst that points out the truth about conservative religions. It's all about image. It's all about what they can get. It's not about protecting and safeguarding people who've been wronged. There isn't a right answer. I'm not saying don't forgive. I'm saying if you choose to forgive, it better be what is good for you, and it better not be something you feel indebted to give, because that's not going to cause healing and restoration. It's going to create resentment. It's going to create an unhealthy dynamic. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to warn, confront, and hold accountable. It doesn't mean you can't forgive or that you have to. It's called being responsible. And if you don't feel safe in confronting and holding people accountable, then maybe you need to go to an elder or to the police. Because if you feel intimidated, intimidation is a crime. So sometimes forgiving yourself is as important as genuinely desiring to forgive somebody else. However, with these kind of dynamics, it's very seldomly taken to the police. If somebody is constantly doing misconduct, the police need to know. One victim is one too many. If somebody shows they can't be professional, ethical, and treat people with a power imbalance respectfully and with genuine care, these people need to be fired, and their face needs to be put where everyone in the community can see it. Even if it's not illegal, sometimes you need to sue. Even though the Bible says Christians shouldn't sue each other, sometimes it's about getting the news out into the community. It's not always what looks best isn't always the best choice. Sometimes the most healthy choice is the most inconvenient. And religions don't like inconvenience. They don't like the elephant in the room. And sometimes they gaslight you into saying it's not an elephant. Oh, you really weren't hurt. You didn't experience that. You're just too sensitive. I mean, church, they are experts in gaslighting. I mean, my family, they're experts, and they don't even realize it. Forgiveness should always be about what is best for you. Healing doesn't look the same for everybody. Sometimes the most healing thing to do is to cut people out of your life, create boundaries, to maintain autonomy and good mental health. Sometimes the best way is the most inconvenient. And anybody who doesn't respect your choice doesn't or isn't a safe place to talk about it, or tries to intimidate, shame, guilt, or preach at you for doing what's best for you, which may not be convenient for everyone else, is not the kind of people who have your best interests in mind. They're not your friends. And for me, they're not anybody I want to be near or see every Sunday. I've chosen to forgive myself. And it's not something you can just say, well, I forgive myself. It's something you have to work toward every day. And yes, I know my parents didn't insidiously isolate me, indoctrinate me to keep me a prisoner. They were products of their own indoctrination as a child. That doesn't make it better. It doesn't make it acceptable. It makes it a little bit more understandable. But they still did it. I've set boundaries. I've explained to people what I'm comfortable with, what triggers me. And if they won't respect it or they ridicule me for choosing to forgive myself instead of other people, then they're the problem, not me. Good people will respect, accept, and support your decision, whether it's forgiveness without reservation, forgiveness with boundaries, forgiveness but no contact, or I forgive myself, I don't forgive you, or a combination of both. It's up to the person who is wronged. Whatever is good for them is what's good for everybody. And we need to stop making unforgiveness as an ungodly trait. Sometimes people use up their chances. Sometimes they use forgiveness as a loophole. Some people use forgiveness and silence to keep doing it. Because if there's no genuine change, they're not remorseful. Religion can be an abusive relationship if there's no boundaries, no autonomy, no standards, and there's no genuine change. If somebody does something more than one time, intentionally with malice, sometimes you need to let the person go. We need to stop making the default setting forgiveness is next to godliness.